Alrighty, it's 3:05, so we're just going to get started. I just want to say hi, everyone. My name is Katrina. I'm president of the Project Pulse Winnipeg executive team this year. And thank you so much for tuning into our very first virtual university panel this season. Just a little bit about Project Pulse. We are a student-organized nonprofit organization with the goal to familiarize students in the community with areas in the health sciences field through an annual conference. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as I'm sure you are all aware, a lot of in-person events and activities have been canceled and postponed across the province. And Project Pulse is continuing our activities online this year. Just a general note, I will say that all of you will have received an email along with the Zoom link that details a waiver and a consent form. And what that's for is this panel will be recorded and will be posted on our social media and online platforms. So if we do not have your consent to post your Zoom video or like your little Zoom square on our social media platforms or on our website, please feel free to turn off your camera, as we can't release your video without your consent. If we have your permission to release your video and your audio with your consent, I would recommend you please fill out the waiver or consent form that was attached to the email and email it back to us as soon as you can. And that's just to make sure that logistically we are all following like guidelines and making sure that we're keeping participants and students safe. Today, we welcome our audience, which consists of high school students coming from all over the province, consisting of 18 schools. And we also have some post-secondary students in here as well, which is lovely. We have a number of members of the executive team here in the call with us today. If they could just give a quick wave, they're out in the audience with us today. Thanks so much, guys. Today, we're going to feature our University Relations Director, Isha, who will be moderating this panel. I'm just here for tech support, but I'll hand it off to Isha now to run the panel, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Yeah, thank you for that, Katrina. So as you mentioned, I'm the University Relations Director for Project Pulse, and today is our first university panel. So I'm just going to start off by introducing some of our speakers, so starting with Malcolm. Malcolm is a third-year biology student at Canadian Mennonite University. Although he initially entered CMU school to study music, he discovered his fascination with science again after taking biology electives and later volunteering in a molecular cardiology lab at St. Boniface. Our next speaker is Sydney. Sydney is pursuing an undergraduate honors degree in psychology at the University of Manitoba, and she hopes to go forward in her studies as a graduate student in psychology. She is working at the university doing research focusing on intergenerational wellness, child development, and parental mental health programming. Sydney hopes to pursue a career as mental health and maintain her connection to her traditional Anishinaabe roots. Our final panelist is Bryden, and Bryden is a fifth-year kinesiology student at the University of Manitoba. He has been steadily involved around health sciences over the last several years and hopes to continue along this path after graduation. He's worked in many different places, such as Pan Am Clinic in St. Boniface, and he has had plenty of exposure to research-related sectors of health science that have intrigued him to pursue a career in medicine. And he hopes to apply to medical school in the fall of 2021. And in doing so, build upon the knowledge and experiences from these placements and opportunities. So now that I've briefly introduced some of our panelists, we're going to be moving into their individual discussions. So I'm going to ask Malcolm if he could do his discussion for us.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks Isha for that introduction. It's nice to see a whole big audience here. That's really cool. So yeah, my name is Malcolm Reimer. I'm in my third year at Canadian Mennonite University here in Winnipeg, which is a school that some of you may have heard of. I find that most people haven't, but as I think we'll find out, all of our panelists here have some connection to the school, which is kind of interesting. So it's a small university. It's near Assiniboine Park, but also operates a college that's connected to the U of W. It's originally a Christian university because it grew out of a Bible college, but that's not all we focus on right now. We have degrees in music, a BA, a business degree, and of course a Bachelor of Science program, which is what I'm enrolled in. So I'm majoring in biology. from that introduction. The Bachelor of Science program is the newest degree program that we have at CMU. So it's fairly small in terms of how many science majors there are. Most of my classes are pretty tiny. The smallest one is 6 students, but that gives us some neat opportunities to do some cool things working together, stuff like that. The program is also growing very quickly. So anyways, we'll admit that I will probably spend a lot of this 20 minutes talking about me, but I promise to do that in a way that lets you gain something from the lessons that I've learned in between graduating high school and where I am in university now. So hopefully it won't all be like a boring, self-indulgent, autobiographical kind of thing. So although I like studying biology very much, I'm certainly planning on a career in science. I didn't actually start university as a science student. So I actually began my first year as a music major. I took all of the science and math classes that I could in high school, which I'm sure that if you're attending this kind of meeting, a lot of you in the audience also have. But when the time came to apply to universities, I wasn't really thinking about science. It just wasn't on my mind. So in high school, like, I had really enjoyed music classes. I was in band. I was in not 1 but 2 choir classes, and I also had another choir that I was in outside of school. So you can tell I'm a big choir nerd, and I still am at university today, which is great. I was taking piano lessons as well. And that's the instrument that I played on in my first year of music here. And I knew I was going to go to university. I knew it was something that I was going to do. It kind of wasn't an option for me. Something inside me knew, like, well, I have to do this. It's just sort of natural. So I knew that was something I was going to do, but I still wasn't really sure about what I was going to study. And I got really good at sort of pretending what I was going to study and sort of pretending that I knew what my whole future was going to be whenever anybody asked that question, like, what do you want to do after high school? What do you want to do? Well, like, earlier, that's what you want to do when you grow up, and that's what you want to do when you graduate, that kind of thing. So personally, I always hated that question, and I can only assume that at least some of you in the audience are like a little bit like me, and that you just kind of dread that because, yeah, that's so intrusive. Like, everybody wants to know all of your life plans. Like, I don't have any life plans, that kind of thing. So I also had a friend in high school who got so tired of that question that she started answering that she was going to be a pirate. And honestly, I have days when I think about that a little bit too much and sort of wondering if that might be also a legitimate career option. Anyways, so I applied to a bunch of universities for like a general first year, but at the time my mindset was that it wasn't worth it to not go on to a really specific degree, and that I should decide right now on a major and stick with it. I had this idea in my mind that if you don't really have a plan for like a university degree, then what's the point, right? So I was really feeling pressure for myself and other people that I should pick like a degree major and kind of have a whole thing planned out. So that was my mistake number 1. Not actually, I had made mistakes before that. So if somebody is actually out there counting my mistakes, that's probably a much bigger number. I don't really want to hear what number that mistake was. Okay, so I'm just letting my mic is a little bit loud, so I'll see if I can bring things closer to me. How's everything working now?
There are moments
all good?
it gets like your mic gets soft and then it gets a little bit louder. Maybe just try adjusting it a little bit. It might help.
Yeah, for sure. I'll see what I can do about the levels here. Okay, we'll see if that works. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, so yeah, it was a mistake originally, but I'll come back to that later. I applied to the Bachelor of Music program at CMU. I was thinking at the time that I would become a music teacher. So I'd had a lot of music teachers by that point throughout high school and that kind of thing. And some of them were really good and had made a big impact on my life. And I kind of wanted to emulate that with what I did as a career. And some of them were also really bad. And I wanted to do better than them because I thought that I could be the music teacher that actually made a difference in other kids' lives. So the thing was, I wasn't really thinking about that as a long-term goal at the time. Whether I knew it or not, it was just kind of a way to convince myself that I had some kind of life plan in place. That by signing myself up for a really specialized degree program like Bachelor of Music Study normally is, that I had the first step sort of down. and that everything would kind of fall into place from there. So I started my first year in the Bachelor of Music degree, and it was actually really fun. I was in a bunch of ensembles. I was taking various classes in like music theory and history, and we were talking about like abstract things like the definition of art, and we were composing various styles of counterpoints, a whole bunch of other stuff. So it was my first year, and because of that, everything was exciting and new and obviously terrifying for a while. And of course, it would have been no matter what I was studying. But after a few months, I started to feel that something was missing from my music classes. All of the content was interesting, and the people I met were obviously very great. I still have friends in the music program, of course, but I was getting the feeling that what I was learning wasn't really useful. I wasn't really doing anything useful. And don't get me wrong, because I have to say that I'm not saying music as a whole, like concept or field, isn't useful or anything like that. Definitely, for some people, it's a great career path and a great thing to study at university. But what I mean to say by that is that I realized unless I set myself on a very specific path and I went through with my music teacher concept and I sort of stuck with that, I wouldn't really apply most of the skills I was learning to any other career. So for me, all of these very specific, very niche, very interesting skills weren't going to be useful in my situation. All right. So yeah, what I was learning, I was very niche. I still love all of the topics that I studied in my first year, but you know, we did things like learning how to write a configured bass accompaniment for 16th century harpsichord music, which is totally fascinating, but doesn't really line up with the kind of skills that I actually developed more by taking all those math and science courses in high school. So everything I was learning was very niche. But my first year, I had also signed up for 2 biology electives. And the main reason I did that was because I had all the high school prerequisites, like all the math and science and like chemistry, physics, biology, that kind of thing. And I didn't want to waste those by not using them for anything else. As the first few months passed, I realized I was actually enjoying these courses a lot more, not just because the subject matter was neat, but because I always felt like I understood the world more after each class. So my science classes were teaching me things like logical reasoning and critical thinking and new ways of writing and communicating with other people and new ways of interpreting the world, which is something I actually really valued. I realized it was giving me more than my other classes were giving me. So after talking with my science professors and a few other students, I decided to switch majors. So now, unlike what some of you might have heard about studying in university, that is not really a rare thing for university students to do. Some people switch multiple times. Some people switch majors right before they graduate. It doesn't necessarily, not necessarily a rare thing. But for me, and particularly at my school, it wasn't super common for somebody to go from one really specialized degree like music to another really specialized degree program like a Bachelor of Science tends to be. So most of my friends and actually my professors were kind of surprised with that, but I didn't second guess my decision. I knew after I had taken these few first courses that in this first year that it was actually the right decision to make, and it turned out to be a very good decision. So since then, I've been taking mostly science courses, and I've enjoyed every one. And I think right now it is more important than ever for people to understand science and to be able to understand like basic scientific principles. Like just now in sort of the modern day, you have COVID and climate change, and everybody is using more and more technology every day. And there are still people out there who can totally deny the science of these very important issues, which is something that I find just a little bit irritating and fascinating. Irritating because me and other science students who spend so long in these degree programs just to learn how much work it takes to really know something for sure. Like all of the work that goes into collecting data and scientific experiments and that kind of thing. But also fascinating because there are people who seem to think very scientifically about their conspiracy theories, but still hold on to outrageous beliefs in the modern day. So at the very least, I think people everywhere need the skills to know that like 5G Wi-Fi towers do not transmit the coronavirus directly into your brain, and that Bill Gates is not building them to do that. So learning the principles behind like scientific studies and statistics and being able to teach them to others is a responsibility, I think, that anybody who is learning science kind of has for the world. And that's sort of my lofty kind of moralistic idea about studying science. And that's a big reason why I like science courses. So they help me understand new things about the world. I've learned how to really interpret a scientific paper and write one myself. I've learned how to build a scientific experiment and all the troubleshooting you have to do when you actually take it off of the page and put it into practice in the real world, and how everything goes wrong and how you have to fix all that. All the critical thinking and communication skills that I've gained from science courses are applicable everywhere in life and not just in the field of biology. And that's what I really appreciate about having made the decision to switch majors and learn more about science in depth, is it actually gives you a lot of skills that are useful everywhere in your life, no matter where you go. And it may not even be a career in science. It could be something sort of tangential, but it opens up a lot more options than my previous degree program would have given me. So yeah, the thing is, as much as I am really happy with what I'm studying now, I wouldn't go back and change anything that I did earlier. So if I hadn't made the like the quote unquote the wrong decision in my first year, I wouldn't have learned anything new about myself or my skills or my interests. So my advice for anyone who is graduating high school and is potentially a little bit unsure about university, my advice is, if you will take it, is this: it's don't lock yourself into any kind of path that you aren't totally sure about. And if I want to say that in a kind of cheesy way, it would be embrace the uncertainty that comes with trying new things. So if you aren't set on a career path or degree, and most people aren't, I know that some in the audience may be students looking to go on to medical school and have had that dream their entire life, and that's great. Obviously, I think most people aren't quite as confident about their whole life path, that kind of thing. But so if you aren't set on that whole career path right at the start, or a degree, and don't be ashamed of that. So use that to your advantage instead, because it probably means that you have the skills to do many different things, and that could be a reason why you aren't totally decided on how you want to apply those skills. I think the best reason to explore new things, and university is obviously a great opportunity to do that, the reason is that you won't actually know what you're good at until you really do it. And that might sound obvious, but it's something that I learn myself again and again. Like every time I take a new class, I realized that I actually had no idea. I thought my skills lied in some certain area, and really I turned out to be good at this one thing and actually really bad at something else. And you don't really know until you actually take the classes that you're thinking about. So for science students in particular, I would also say don't neglect everything else. If you have room in your degree, take electives in areas that are totally new to you. Although I mentioned that studying music full-time wasn't right for me, it definitely still helped me a lot by building up my writing skills, for sure. I think that writing is one of the most important skills that you need to succeed in university. So don't ignore arts and humanities just because you don't think they'll fit in a science degree. They will definitely give you new perspectives that you haven't thought about before, which is kind of the whole point of like higher education and all that. And they're also fun. So do that for that reason, if nothing else. And then my last piece of advice is to not take things too seriously. Although some of you might be, like I said, might be thinking about medical school and that kind of thing. Maybe you do need to take some things very seriously. I doubt that you need to take everything not as seriously as I personally did in my first year when I was choosing all of my majors and classes. So yeah, so don't overthink things like choosing majors and classes, because the most important thing is that you learn something new, whether or not it makes a massive impact on your life and like changes your whole life goals. Probably not going to happen, but so don't treat every decision as if it's going to make a huge impact. I mentioned that going into a very specific music degree was a mistake for me. That's not really true, because that year of music classes I took was definitely not wasted. It's still going to be useful in my entire life because it's still something I like to do. The only mistake that I made was thinking that a choice of major would define everything that came afterwards. And that's totally not true. One of my friends from the music program who has decided to stick with music, she's still doing it. She's actually going to medical school after that degree. So she's using her music degree to also get the prerequisites for going into medical school. So yeah, main message of that whole thing is don't focus too much on the little things. And I think if I still have a little bit of time, I hope you will, Isha will stop me if I've gone over the 20 minutes, but I would love to show you a little bit of what I'm working on right now in my developmental biology class at CMU. So I have a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation here. Perhaps I can share my screen if you don't mind me taking a minute.
Are you able to share your screen, or do we have to set it on this end?
Let's find out. Host disabled participant screen sharing. If you can change that, that's okay. I didn't warn anybody that it had something to share.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure that out. There you go. That should work.
Cool. So I hope you can all see the slide I have right now. It looks like it's just loading. And maybe it's taking a little longer than I expected. Okay, I'll stop that. And instead, I will, I will just show you, if you don't mind, the whole browser. You can take a look at all of my open tabs. Anyway, so the one thing that I love about biology, and that I hope I can share with everybody else who is interested in studying biology, is that it's a very broad field. So it spans like microscopic cells to the whole macroscopic world of like ecology, climate science, and that kind of thing. On the right, represented this, we have a globe, right? You could study at CMU, you can study ecology and like the different ways that that plants communities interact with each other and how invasive species affect the environment. Or you can get really, really in depth and look at bacterial colonies and just how the way these individual bacteria interact with each other. So experts in biology become highly specialized in their fields, but specialization requires knowledge of the basics. So a lot of what you do in high school is learning the very basics of biology, and continue to do that all throughout an undergrad degree, but especially in the first couple of years. But for me, biology started to get really fun when you're working on questions that nobody has answered yet. So our class right now, in my class developmental biology, it's the one with 6 of us. So we're researching a very specific group of cells in the pupae of fly species, Drosophila melanogaster, which are fruit flies. Maybe you've heard about them as model organisms from your biology classes. So my professor in this class did his entire PhD research on this one structure. In the front foreleg of this fly species when it's in its pupal stage, going from a larva into its adult stage, which actually looks like a fly. And what he's interested in studying is this, maybe you can see it just to the right of those little 5 labeled cells, is this group of bristles. It's called the sex comb. And out of context, that term sounds very strange. What it really means is it's a line of bristles on the forelegs of these Drosophila flies that they use for mating purposes. So it's kind of like how birds will use their feathers and plumage to attract a mate. Flies will use these specific bristles on their forelegs in all sorts of ways, little dances that they have, as kind of like courtship rituals, as much as flies have those. So what we can do with these epithelial cells on this developing fruit fly leg, as it turns out, they expand in order to push this sex comb up into its place on the adult fly leg. And I'll show you a quick video of that later. What we do is we label the apical area of these cells, so the outer area on the top of the cells, and we track the changes in area as the leg develops. So we end up with a lot of graphs like this, where we label 5 cells and we find the average area. And what we find is that the area, it doesn't actually increase linearly. It kind of goes up and down and up and down and up and down, and it oscillates. And this is a pattern that people find all over the place in developing embryos. And nobody really knows why. So if you can see the individual cells, sometimes they have these spikes in growth and they go back down, and it's kind of this ratcheting action where they expand a little bit and then shrink and then expand a little bit more and then shrink. That's how they actually get bigger over time. But at any one point in time, they're kind of ballooning like that. So the interesting thing about this is that we can actually use the expansion of these cells to model the effects of cancer growth, because in fruit fly legs, this specific group of cells is expanding in a way that really mimics the way that tumors grow at a very early stage inside people. So this research, although we're not extending it like into the diagnosis of cancer or anything like that at CMU, but we're contributing to a whole body of research that's using model organisms to represent what might be going on in cancer in humans. And we know that the early stages of cancer are very hard to detect. So I'll share for one last thing, I'll share the video of our most recent group of cells here. And you can see that little thick line of bristles, in the hours after the fly begins pupation, it starts to slowly move to the right. And the cells that are expanding below it are the ones that we're interested in because they start to act like tumor cells. So yeah, thanks for listening to all of that. I hope that I could share a little bit of what we're doing in my one particular class with you, this really specialized little bit of biology that I think is very interesting because it could have so many impacts for the wider world. But right now it's just in its really early stages, and we're still working on questions that like nobody has studied because it's such a tiny little area of the field. So I hope that it maybe inspires at least a few of you to think about studying biology in the future.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Malcolm. That was really great and informational. Now I'll open the floor to Sydney to start her discussion.
Great, thank you, Isha. Well, that sounds like very interesting research, Malcolm, so I'm excited to see what comes of that in the near future. So I will get started now. Like Isha said, my name is Sydney, and I am doing an honors degree in psychology at the U of M. I'm really excited to speak with you all today, share a little bit about my experiences, and then also to hear from you too. I know that high school can be a really challenging and confusing time for so many people. I certainly struggled a lot. So to anyone who is not enjoying themselves or experiencing hardships, I just want to say that you're not alone and this doesn't last forever. There's also a little phrase that I recently heard of through some of my work in the psych lab in a program that we're running, and it's just, you can do hard things. And I find myself saying that constantly over and over again when I feel in over my head or just kind of unable to sort through my thoughts and just generally overwhelmed. You can do hard things. It doesn't minimize the difficulty of what you're going through, but it reinforces that you're capable of handling whatever's been brought to you. And I know that COVID adds a whole other layer of difficulty when it comes to mental health and, you know, just being isolated generally. So I think that it's now more than ever a really important time to just check in with yourself and your loved ones, and just be really, really kind to yourself. Um, so anyways, now I will get into a little bit of my background. I am an Anishinaabe woman. I'm a member of Sandy Bay First Nation. I also have some European ancestry. So my dad, he's Ukrainian, Scottish, and Irish, and then my mom is Indigenous. And so I've lived in Winnipeg my whole life. And like I said, I am in my 4th year of my program. And usually that means that I would be writing my thesis and graduating this year. But I kind of took a roundabout way to getting to the psych program because I'm very indecisive. So I had initially, out of high school, thought that I would go into business. And I applied to Asper, I got in, and then I didn't even make it to my first class when I decided that that was not for me. It wasn't a fit. I truthfully never was interested in going into business, but I was so lost in high school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And everyone just said, oh, get a business degree. You'll be employable after 4 years of university. And I thought, okay, that's safe. That's a really safe option. Guaranteed employment. Cool. I'm just going to do that. But that didn't work out. So then I thought, okay, maybe I'll go into medicine because I have a passion for contributing positively to people's lives. I want to, as cheesy as this is, leave the world better than I found it in a way, just to feel like I contributed something. And I guess I thought medicine was sort of a direct way to do that. And I think a lot of people in my life were rooting for me to go into medicine. I think when you are somebody who has strengths in sciences in high school, people sort of push for that. At least that's what I found between parents and teachers and friends. And so my first year of university, I did a science program. I followed a science program. And so I was taking like bio classes, chem, stats, and I hated it. Like I absolutely loathed this time because I wasn't passionate about these things. They were really difficult for me and I couldn't even work through the difficulty because I was just not interested in it, as it turned out. And even medicine wasn't really something that I was super passionate enough to work through that kind of uncomfortable moment just to get to that goal. So I ended up saying, okay, this isn't working for me. I need to reassess. And I really just looked at my life and sort of the things that I am truly passionate about and recognized that I've always been interested in people and how we operate together and at an individual level. And I also had experiences firsthand and in my family with mental health. So I thought, okay, maybe I should give psychology a shot. And so that's what I did. I ended up getting into the psych program a year or so after most people would have. So I was quite behind to begin with. And then, I just realized that you're really not going to know what you're interested in if you don't try things first. And it's all about the fit and how true that is to who you are. But it's tough because, you probably don't really know who you are in high school. I certainly did not. I didn't have enough life experiences. I don't even think I took a psych course in high school, as funny as that may seem. But it really takes just a lot of trial and error to figure out what feels right for you, and then also just understanding yourself and working through sort of forming your identity. And that's something that you can't rely on anyone else to do. It can't be, the identity that your parents have created for you or the one that your friends and teachers have created, as easy as that might be, because then at least you know what you want, what you are supposed to do, let's say. But it's a very, very easy way to create a lot of resentment for those people who you love, because you start living your life for them and not for yourself. So that was something that I was really having a hard time with in my early years of that transition period out of high school. And it's also, really important to know what's out there. And I think that that's what's so great about an initiative like this, is just exposing you as students to your options, because there's so much, and there's really not a lot of support that high school students get, at least in my experience. I didn't get a lot of exposure to my options. So I ended up reaching out to some people who I knew of who were in psychological fields, and just sort of sat down with them and talked about their experiences and just asked a lot of questions. I'm sure they were very annoyed with me just trying to fit some, young person into their busy lives, asking tens and tens of questions about some of the worries that I had about getting into a field like this. And so I think that no matter how annoying you feel like you're going to be asked your questions, that's the best way to get a sense of what you're in store for, outside of course, experiencing it for yourself. And so now I'll just chat a little bit about some of the work that I've come into in psychology and how it's related to sort of the health sciences from a social science perspective. So as I mentioned, I'm an Indigenous person, and maintaining a connection to that side of me and our traditional ways of being and knowing was super important to me, especially as I move forward into a career in psychology. So I am currently working on a measure to assess the wellness of Indigenous youth and families from a holistic perspective. And so in doing that, I've done a scoping review, which involves a literature search. So you're kind of looking through journal articles from your populations of interest. So I've been looking across Canada, the US, Australia, and New Zealand, just to see what's out there in terms of wellness assessments. And then to gather some common themes, what's worked, what's not working. And then I've put together a council who make up my participant pool in this research of Indigenous leaders and community members with relevant experience in healthcare, education, policy development, to just really understand how feasible creating a measure like this is, and then what we need to do to ensure its respectful implementation in communities. So that will sort of be wrapping up in the new year, I think, and hope to have a measure developed by then. And then I'll be going into some pilot project work just to test out the measure and see how families and community respond to it, and to see if there are any improvements in wellness that can be seen from the measure. And then moving forward, I want to go into an undergraduate program. So I'm leaning towards clinical psychology, which is sort of very research oriented, and it's kind of your classic, diagnosis with the mental disorder, working through the diagnostic and statistic manual on how to understand and treat mental disorders. I'm also considering developmental psychology, which is highly related to the work that I've been doing in the lab that I'm in, which is called the Hearts and Minds Lab. And so we have some overarching projects that many people in the lab are involved with outside of our own independent research. And a lot of that is related to child development and parenting skills for parents who are struggling with their mental health, and then just how that mutually impacts children and parents. And I've also thought about school psychology too, maybe even counseling. Like there's so many options within psychology that can be considered when you have your undergrad. And at the end of the day, I think I just want to make an impact. Like I was saying earlier, that's important to me. That's a very, very broad goal. But I think that I finally found sort of the more specific stream that I want to do that in. And then also in keeping with my values of respecting and revitalizing traditional ways of being, I want to ensure that our Indigenous communities are thriving, and that it's not so much about being somebody who looks at someone they're working with and says, this is what I can do to help you. But I think it's more so about empowerment and supporting people, supporting themselves. So it's really restoring autonomy in Indigenous communities and ensuring that self-determination is sort of at the forefront of how we go about restoring wellness in our lives as Indigenous people, which is something that's been really significantly impacted through the years of colonization that we've endured. And so I'm also involved in an organization called Gani Ganichik. We are a community service organization, completely Indigenous led, and we offer programs and services for Indigenous families, women, and youth. And we just focus on essentially those goals that I mentioned earlier about empowering Indigenous peoples to live really full, enriching lives from this perspective of wellness that's holistic and encompassing emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental well-being. And I feel like, in a sense, as I was sort of preparing for this panel, it to me seems like this was the original sort of conceptualization of health sciences, right? With the goal of living your life to the fullest extent, the most enriching extent, with wellness at the forefront. And it just involves community and family and all sorts of important factors that go into what it means to be well. So that's just a little bit about what I'm working on right now. There are also some questions that Isha, you had sent out to sort of frame our discussion around that I want to touch on a little bit. And the first was regarding school life balance. And so that is a skill that I have not yet mastered, but I'm working on it. And it is very, very difficult to figure out. I do know, though, that school and work should not be your whole life. That's something that I had to learn the hard way, that it should be a part of your life. I think that, you're on the fast track to burnout if you're consumed by your studies and your work, because it takes away from the things that are truly important. And not to say that career goals are not important, but you need to take care of yourself if you want to be able to fulfill those goals that you have first. And I think if you're starting to look at a to-do list or just in your day-to-day and nothing seems appealing to you, then that's a pretty good indication that you're burning out, or that you have some other mental health things weighing on you. And it's just so important to nurture your mind and your spirit first. Check in with yourself, like I mentioned. Find people who make you feel good, people who you don't feel exhausted by, to bring in as your support network. It's so easy to isolate yourself in your studies. I did that a lot through high school and my first couple years of university, and it's so lonely and so miserable and truly just not worth it. I also definitely recommend finding ways to get out of your head when you can. I know that's not easy if you're a full-time student, but doing things like just moving your body, connecting with nature, and engaging in self-care in whatever way that means to you. So that's such a buzzword right now, and I feel like it's misunderstood in a way, because it doesn't have to mean a big spa day or anything like that. It could just be turning off your phone for a little bit, turning off your email notifications. That's something that you will definitely find start to increase as you journey through your academic career. And just being with yourself. Binge Netflix for an evening, phone your grandma, do things that really fill your cup. And then a really good way to figure out how to fill that cup is to decipher whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So if you're introverted, things like being creative and doing really restorative things on your own can be super fulfilling. Whereas for extroverts, you'll draw energy from other people. So getting that social aspect, doing the FaceTime, or, going for walks if it's, safe to do that, depending on the COVID climate. But I think the more that you understand yourself, the more that you'll understand that balance and what you need to sort of maintain it. And so I think in terms of advice that I would give to my younger self, just to echo Malcolm, like, don't take things so seriously. That was another big mistake that I made. all throughout high school and again in university is that I was so hyper focused on just like getting good grades, getting a good CV or resume put together with all the extracurriculars that I could do, but I was losing sight of what actually mattered and the people who I loved so much that I was neglecting in the attempt to get that perfect set up for university or for a future career. So I think that just taking a minute to zoom out of your head, your life, your test, your project, whatever it is, and just to say, okay, what is really important? Like at the end of the day, big picture, what matters here? And so I think just really focusing on addressing the narrative that you have with yourself. Like you would probably be amazed at how horrible we are with our own inner monologues to ourselves. We're our number one biggest critics. And I think just taking that time to check in and say, oh, that's really not a helpful thought that I'm having can make a big difference. And another really interesting piece of advice that I got recently is if you get an A+ on something, you worked too hard on it. And there is such a thing as working too hard. I can guarantee you that. Like if you're doing your 100% best and it's costing you your mental health, the relationships with the people you love, and just like having fun life experiences, it's not worth it. It's really, quite frankly, not worth it. So I think the jump from high school to university definitely is a significant one. And to be honest, I far prefer university. I think there's so many more people. It feels like there's less of a microscope on your life, which is something that I struggled with. I came from a pretty small high school and just felt like everyone was always watching, gossiping, talking, and that was sort of exhausting and I think contributed to my lack of understanding of myself because I was trying to fit in within that context and there wasn't a lot of room to breathe. So university really gave me that opportunity to just be more independent and explore. First year is super challenging academically, but I've heard that that's somewhat intentional to weed out those who are going to be really committed to something. And I mean, it definitely worked for me in the sciences. Like I could not handle that, but it really does get easier. And when you find what works for you, things get even better after that. Like honestly, at least at the U of M in the program that I'm in, taking notes and studying are the two things that you just have to figure out how you do it best. There's a lot of different methods, everybody's different. And as soon as you find that balance, then you can just get into the groove of things and it becomes a lot easier. There's also so many interesting electives that you can take regardless of the program that you're in. You will always need to have those option courses. So explore things that are kind of out there that sort of pique your interest, but might not be totally relevant to what you're doing, and you might surprise yourself. Like I'm doing a psych degree, but some of the best courses that I've taken were in women and gender studies and philosophy and Indigenous language courses. So you have a lot of options, and I would just say really try to expand your horizons as much as possible. So that is all that I have for today, and I'm really looking forward to taking some questions from you guys after. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Sydney. That was really eye-opening and just really wonderful. Now I'm going to have our last speaker have his discussion. So Bryden, go ahead.
All right. Definitely some great points both Sydney and Malcolm articulated there. You might possibly see some reoccurring themes come up in my discussion here too. Some similar experiences for sure. So yeah, I just want to thank Project Pulse here for letting us three get to talk to you guys here today, and also everyone for attending this session too. It just kind of shows a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue, pursuit from a lot of you guys, especially being mostly in high school. It's definitely a great first step, I think. And for myself, I think going back to high school, one of my first mistakes was not doing things like this or not attending information sessions, or you know, we'd have universities come to my high school. I went to Vincent Massey, and we'd have people come with pamphlets or be guest speakers at our school. And instead of me voluntarily or readily going towards these things to learn more about university and stuff, I kind of let them come to me. And then when they came to me, it was like through one ear and out the other, unfortunately. So that's one thing I wish I did better, but I'll kind of talk you through the path as to what's kind of happened here over the last, I guess, 5 years now. So yeah, so I'm in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Recreation Management at the University of Manitoba. I'm in my 4th year of the program, and then my 5th year of university. What I'm currently doing, I'll just kind of give you like a little summary as what I'm doing right now. I'm doing a fieldwork placement, so it's kind of like taking all your undergraduate and all your courses that you've taken over the last few years, kind of applying that knowledge and experience and taking it actually into the field, into a working environment. So I'm, again, pursuing the career of medicine now. So a big part, I'm gonna ask you guys a question. You guys can do the little thumbs up or hand clap or whatever the little emoji is. Who here, I guess everyone is in the, maybe thinking the health sciences area. Who here is maybe thinking of being like either maybe wanting to go into medicine, a healthcare practitioner, a nurse, a health researcher, careers like that? Let's just see. Got some thumbs up going. Oh, a lot of thumbs up on this other one here. Nice, nice. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, good to know. Interesting. Thank you for that. So yeah, so what I'm currently doing right now is I'm doing 2 research projects. And all medical schools are different. Some across Canada, there's 18 medical schools in Canada. Some say, yeah, you know, research is good. Some like volunteering. Others are not too concerned about that. I've been thinking maybe going out of province to go do medical school. So in some other schools, research, volunteering, extracurriculars are more important. So what I'm doing right now is I'm doing 2 research projects as part of my practicum. One is neuromusculoskeletal research. It's kind of a big word. Nervous system, muscular system, skeletal system put into one. So the one study I was doing, and unfortunately COVID has kind of stopped it. It was a study at the Royal Winnipeg Ballet Service, and it was individuals with disabilities like Down syndrome, and we're doing a test of their balance and their walking speed and their gait, and then they go through a 10-week intervention where they participate in ballet and dance, and then after we see if that intervention improved their scoring on those different balance and gait tests. So that was one project I was working on. The other one, I do have an Indigenous background like Sydney. I'm Métis. So one of the projects I'm doing is with a professor and a faculty. It's based off of land-based education. So the importance of land-based education in terms of Indigenous health and really, yeah, connecting to that whole emotional, spiritual, mental, and emotional, that medicine wheel concept that Sydney was kind of alluding to there as well. So we're considering developing a land-based education facility on our campus. So those are 2 of the research projects I'm kind of bringing in, and it's going to kind of show how kind of diverse and comprehensive that the program that I'm in, and hopefully I'm not going to try and like sell it to you guys, but I believe that like if someone wants to go into the health field or medicine, that kinesiology is a great option. So I'll get more into that. And then some of the other projects I'm working on, I'm just volunteering as a senator in our faculty, helping with communication with, especially right now during the pandemic, lots of students and their professors don't really even know each other right now, and putting names to faces. So I'm helping doing some interviews with some faculty members, getting that out there to our students and whatnot. So that's some of the volunteering. And then I'm also doing a scoping review, a research project on how to integrate more Indigenous content into the nursing curriculum here at U of M. So those are some of the projects I'm working on right now, and hopefully that all those projects will be beneficial and helpful as an applicant, and kind of thinking long-term as that medicine goal and having some of those things in mind. So I'll kind of describe the journey here a little bit. So I started at CMU too, just like Malcolm. Took some courses probably similarly to him as well. So I spent my first 2 years there. First year, again, first mistake and first recommendation is that showing that big jump from, sorry, I shouldn't say big jump, but there is a transition from high school to university. And I think one of the first things that is important are studying habits. And I think the first thing I learned was that, you can't study a couple nights or the night before an exam in university and expect to succeed. And I think that was something that worked quite often in high school. And I honestly, in high school, I took the chemistries, biologies, physics, pre-cal math, got 90s in all of them, did pretty well. So I'm like, okay, so I have a record of success here. Let's try and continue those similar strategies, go into university here, study the night or two before, and then the first midterm I got was a 55%. So it's like, oh wow, that's a nice little wake-up call on the first set of midterms there. A 55, a 60, and a 61. I remember those three marks very fondly, and it's been a journey ever since. So I kind of saw that. I'm like, okay, so it's from the first day, you have to kind of treat university like a full-time job, and obviously, that whole work-life balance is crucial, and finding friends and finding opportunities to socialize and whatever kind of makes you happy. So making sure that's not dragging your whole day out. But definitely the studying part would be my first tip. First day, you get your course outline, your syllabus. I might say, okay, 2 or 3 midterms and maybe a couple assignments. That's your whole kind of outline. And then there's not a whole lot of direction sometimes with certain classes. So you have to be, taking notes and doing practice from the get-go, I think. So so there was that. And the reason I went to CMU was I liked that small class environment. I thought that was going to be really cool. And I knew about that science program. It was newer at the time and it really intrigued me. And I also played basketball there for 2 years. I loved playing basketball in high school. So you can imagine though, having that basketball and taking 4 courses was quite hectic. It was very busy. So where I wanted to go with that was then, so in that first year, I took a couple of the science courses. Obviously, studying habits, not ideal. But then I took a couple of those bio courses, chemistry courses. Just wasn't really for me. So then here's the first little, as we're following the theme of changing career paths, I'll follow suit here and say that then, okay, after that first year, returned to CMU for the second year, but then I forget how I found out, but then must have done some reading at the U of M. So, okay, Faculty of Kinesiology and Recreation Management. Okay, I've played sports my whole life. I've liked the idea of, being active and being healthy, and I've, been injured so many times playing sports that I've been accustomed to seeing physiotherapists and seeing doctors countless times. I always called the Pan-Am Clinic my second home, not because I worked there, but because I was a patient. And then sure enough, I worked there too. So it really became a second home of mine. So then I thought, okay, well, physiotherapy, that'll be kind of cool. So let's try that. So I took courses at U of M and CMU in my second year. So I started taking some of the prerequisites for physiotherapy in my second year. So everything was kind of going good. Everything was kind of coming into play. Third year, fully moved to U of M. Now in that kinesiology faculty, I'm in there. I'm meeting some new people. I took a class called Planning Principles, And something really resonated with me there that day in one of the lectures. And the teacher said the importance of networking and talking to professors. And I think people often get intimidated by their teachers or professors. I think an important thing to note is that they are interested in your learning. They want to see you succeed. So I think it's important that you ask as many questions as you can, send them emails, talk to them after class, get to know more about what their backgrounds are, if they're doing research, or some of their experiences that they've had. And then they might open up opportunities for work experiences for you, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera. So ever since then I started looking for jobs and stuff that were kind of relevant to my field. She was mentioning, jobs in retail or working at a store. You gain some really good life skills from that. But if you want to, say, pursue a career in health, it's good to have some of that relevant experience. So then I thought, okay, let's work at a physiotherapy clinic at Pan Am. So I mean, wanted to go into physio, kind of made sense, right? Then third year, I was taking a class called Introduction to Research. There was a little diagram in the textbook, and I mentioned a individual working in Hamilton, Ontario. She was a health promotion manager for the city of Hamilton, and she was both a physiotherapist and had a nutritional sciences background. So I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool dual career, and in terms of health sciences, especially in terms of prevention of disease and illness, the two most common or the two most well-researched aspects of preventing individuals from acquiring disease or illness is physical activity and nutrition. It's been shown that those two concepts have shown to be most beneficial for health promotion compared to things like pharmaceutical type of stuff. So I kind of thought that'd be kind of cool profession. Then that summer after my third year, then I changed it again. This is the fourth time now. So I was thinking, okay, I have a pretty good GPA now after that first semester where I was an abomination of getting 54s and 61s on midterms, and I started getting A pluses and I started getting A's, and I didn't want any more B's or B minuses or whatever they are. So then, I started really getting settled and focused. So then I thought, okay, well, my GPA is pretty good. I have this unique degree program that I'm in that's really giving me a good comprehensive view on health. And then, I'm starting to get kind of more creative and more imaginative in my thinking. I've always been fascinated with doctors' knowledge and all the expertise that they have. So I thought, okay, maybe medicine would be a good career choice. So I began pursuing medicine. Then my fourth year, I took organic chemistry, and I did not do good in it. So I dropped it, and that was just last fall. So I dropped it, and now you're going to be like, oh my God, well, you dropped organic chemistry and you're not really good at it. So there's no way you could be a doctor, right? It's impossible. And I think it's important to note that, when you go through a degree program, there are going to be some courses you don't like. You're going to take a degree and it's going to be 90 to 120 credit hours. So that's the equivalent of 30 to 40 courses you're going to have to take. And some of them are going to suck. Some of them you're going to have to dread, but you're going to have to push your way through it. And you're going to have to look at that end goal. And it's like, okay, well, if I want to be a doctor, maybe I'll have to go do these courses. So now I have not redone organic chemistry, but I've noticed one of my strengths is my ability to learn courses and learn material on my own. So I know as a applicant to medicine, there is an MCAT exam. Again, this is long down the road for you guys, but it's considered the daunting exam. That's 7 hours long, and you have to review and study 7 to 8 basic university courses that you've either taken or you need to learn. And so yeah, there's that. So I didn't redo organic, but upcoming here from January until I write my exam, hopefully in July or August, I will be learning those courses on my own. And then I realized though that when you become a doctor or you become a healthcare professional, of course, yeah, some of that knowledge, learning the biochems, the organic chems, some of that cellular knowledge is important. But once you get into the profession of being either a nurse or a doctor, physiotherapist, chiropractor, a lot of it is learning how to work with people. A lot of it's understanding people's histories. A lot of it's understanding, what do I want to say here? There's a lot more in terms of like anatomy and stuff. Anatomy is a big part of it. And that's one thing that was also in my degree, human anatomy. It was more muscular based. And I found that really cool. So there's more to it. So even if you don't like organic chemistry, and I'm sure Malcolm has probably taken some of these science courses too. I did not like the science experiments or doing the titration labs or all the apparatus and all the different tubes and systems and stuff. It was daunting to me. And I did all right in it, but I didn't really like it. So it's important to note that even if you don't like those types of things, but you want to be a healthcare professional and you want to help people, that those things at the end of the day aren't really going to come into play unless you want to become a healthcare researcher. Then yes, those experiments are huge. But if you're going to be like a sports medicine doctor and you're going to be treating someone's ankle injury or something, then the whole tubes and cellular systems and some of those experimental type of things might not come into play as much. So it's important to note that there will always be something in the career of health sciences or as a professional that you can direct your interests to. So that's why kinesiology is great, because it really gives a unique perspective on learning about different subgroups and different populations of people. So there's a course, history of physical activity and sociology of physical activity. So for example, it talks a lot, there's some content about indigenous people, indigenous material, and we have to think, for example, okay, well, indigenous people, there's discrepancies in terms of health outcomes that have been well documented in research. And if you guys have heard the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, they outline their 92 calls to action, and things like income, education, health are all kind of big components there. So sociology and history kind of come into play. And as a doctor, especially, the problem I think in terms of our healthcare system sometimes is that doctors might treat patients as if they're just a scientific case. Okay, here's the injury, here's the illness, and here's a solution based off research and evidence. But it's important to note that, especially what my degree has taught me, is how to look at an individual more holistically. Think, okay, what is their history? What are some of the sociological implications that have caused this individual to be in the situation where they do have this illness or disease? And I think, like, especially, for example, since I've done a lot of indigenous research, you have to look at that health is not, there's obviously some hereditary and there's some genetic things involved sometimes as to why someone might be more likely to get say, cancer or a heart attack or a stroke. But often there's a lot of sociological implications too, and a lot of other things that are going on in terms of someone's community. Do they have access to certain resources? Do they have access to physical activity? Do they have, are they performing proper nutritional practices? Are they, what is their parents' history? Were their parents in residential schools, for example? And did that impact their health and their mental well-being, and then their ability to cope and provide for the next generation and for their offspring and for their children? So that's why I really like my degree, because again, I think science is a great degree, and it's going to prepare a student really well for nursing or medicine, because there is lots more than I can comprehend in terms of like cellular stuff and experimental things and research, and some of those courses like biochem and organic chem that you have to take. But I think my degree can also offer that ability to work with patients, work with different populations, understand their history, as well as then also learning how the body moves, how the body works, learning some of those anatomies. Some courses I took that I liked, motor control and learning, so learning how to work with people with disabilities, and learning some of the concepts there. Because yeah, health sciences is a really broad and comprehensive term, and our faculty kind of introduce you to, the research side of it, the anatomy side of it, the history of health, the sociology implications of health. So there's really countless opportunities involved in health sciences. So again, not trying to sell my degree here or force you guys to do it, but it's definitely, I think, in terms of health sciences, it's a good option, just as much as science. Or even if someone said what they're going to do music therapy to go into medicine, that's also totally fine. You can take any degree. You can take music, you can take astrology, you can take anything you want, and you can go into that professional practice of medicine. You just might have to take some additional elective courses to have those elective courses and some of that knowledge in order to apply to something like medicine or physiotherapy, but you can take any degree program you want. So that's just some discussion there. Some other tips I would have: the networking with professors, again, was a big thing. Finding students and other people in your classes. It's really tough right now, especially with COVID, to be able to communicate with other students or meet new people in classes. But having friends or having people to even just talk about like tests or assignments, and not like copying off your friend for their assignment or word for word or that type of stuff, but having someone you can talk with and share feelings with, and obviously I know there's a psychological concept that if someone does bad on a test or whatever, they'll feel a whole lot better if 25 other people also do terrible on the test too. But just having some people and people in your life who can relate with you, especially in your classes, and you can share notes with if you miss a class. Having people that you can rely on sometimes to take notes, or to work in a group with, especially working in lots of group work too in university, I think. So having people that you're confident, you feel comfortable working with. If you get the opportunity to choose your group, which often also doesn't happen, lots of classes will force you into groups with other people that you may not want to work with, but then that's another great opportunity to learn how to work with people, because every single profession in healthcare will expect you to communicate and to work with other individuals as part of a larger team. And it's another great thing in terms of kinesiology, especially, is getting to work with other groups and doing group assignments and communicating with people. Another one I liked, another suggestion I had would be, especially if you're at the U of M, is following social media accounts. That's a big way of conveying information today. And like reading newsletters and the pamphlets. There's a thing called the Student Weekly. It's an email that goes out every single week. And then there's one, if you're an Indigenous student newsletter that goes out every second week. And first 3 years they would come through my email inbox, I'd press it and then just tap next. And then the last couple of years, I actually read through them now, and I'm like, oh, there's working opportunities in here. Oh, there's volunteering opportunities. Oh, there's scholarships and bursary opportunities. because I mean, who doesn't like, because university obviously very expensive. I'll tell you guys that right now, and that's never going to change. But even just things like keeping your eyes open in those emails and in your faculty and on those social media accounts, they will show things like bursaries or scholarships. And, you know, if you fit the right criteria or you write a little paper, then you can earn some free money. I mean, who doesn't like free money, right? So keeping your eyes open for that, staying involved from the start. So again, my first couple of years was really focused on school, basketball. Didn't look at some of those things like volunteering or getting involved in student groups or stuff. And these last couple of years I have now. And I think that just, opens up your network, you meet new people, volunteering, work experiences come about. And especially, if you want to apply to these professional programs like medicine or physiotherapy, you know, those things look really good on a resume. Or if you're applying and you got to go through the interview process, talking about having these experiences, you can say, oh, I was part of this group and I learned these certain skills like problem solving and determination and organization of time. And so it's developing some of those soft skills, they call it. And it's really good for interviews and then eventually working in the field of choice. And then I think I just had one other thing I wanted to say. Yeah, especially there'll be some courses and they'll be difficult, and sometimes you just have to do the exams and study for them and then just kind of get them out of the way. And I know some courses I've had that feeling where I learned everything up until that point for that midterm or that final exam, and then it was all out the window in like 2 or 3 days after the exam. Don't remember a thing from that class, just happy I got it done. There will be a couple of classes like that here and there. But I really challenge you guys, and I've challenged myself more and more, not to walk through the motions. So when you're going through these courses, try and make connections to yourself, see how it's going to benefit you. Try and make connections to how it's going to benefit other people in your field and around the world. Because again, you guys are the next kind of set of students, and you know, you're going to see, we've seen many people, we've seen many amazing talented individuals and come across and have designed and developed new vaccines or new inventions and stuff. So it's up to you guys now to kind of challenge yourself and not just be, okay, let's do this multiple choice exam, memorize it for this exam, and then next thing you know, it's out the window. You kind of want to try and make connections and see where some of this stuff can take you. So like my example was, I took the history of physical activity course and the sociology course, and then also did a job of working for Indigenous health through the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. Kind of had all those different experiences, and then I kind of realized, okay, well, I think I'd want to do something in my career in medicine, maybe in terms of Indigenous health promotion. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm in this unique perspective where I kind of understand some of the, again, I think even Sydney was mentioning in her research about intergenerational trauma and stuff there too. And I think, you know, that has a relation, and there's physical activity implications, and that's well beyond the scope of this conversation. But it's not just, okay, take my degree and take my courses, get them out of the way as fast as I can, and then not try and make connections and see where you can evoke a change. Because I think in our faculty and all these health science faculties, it's about evoking change and being trendsetters and being people who are going to create new ways to look at health and stuff. So I think the way in terms of health is prevention, not treatment, and thinking of strategies where we can not have to treat people who have cancer or diabetes or etc. And obviously it's inevitable, people are gonna contract regardless. But you know, I think our faculty challenges the way of thinking that let's create processes, let's create programming, let's create ways of thinking that are going to prevent us from getting those things in the first place. And then that will just be more beneficial for our healthcare system and for everyone's health in general. So yeah, I think I'll end it at that. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions and I'd love to answer them. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much again to all three of you. That was a really wonderful discussion from all of you. I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone here who's listening in super informational as well. Now we're going to move into the Q&A period. Some people who signed up to the Google form did already submit some questions, so we're going to start with that. Some of them are just more general questions, so if any of the three of you want to just jump in to answer, feel free to do that. And some of them are more like targeted towards specific people, so I'll just let you guys know when that is coming up. So we'll start with the first question, which is from a grade 11 student at Whistler High School. Also, some of the questions were kind of addressed by you already, so feel free to answer the part of the question that maybe haven't been touched on as much. So her question was, what is the balance between school and normal life? And also, what are you planning to do with your degree, and how difficult was it to get into your program?
Okay, I think I did touch on most of those things in my discussion. It wasn't hard to get into my program. I think, yeah, obviously, having some good grades in high school, I think, are helpful. I don't recall exactly what the specific grade requirements were per se, but as long as you guys are doing well and you're getting good grades, and I would assume lots of you guys are taking science and math courses and English, so I think those are mandatory anyways, but even some of those electives. I think if you guys are pursuing medicine though, then obviously yes, there will be a lot more requirements and a lot more stricter GPA requirements and stuff, and those obviously vary across where you apply and stuff. Just to put it in perspective, like for example, to apply to medicine or to be an applicant in medicine or as a doctor, like the average GPA is around 4.15, I think. It's around that 4-point GPA, which is like around an A to A plus. So, and yeah, obviously, yeah, there's some other things you're gonna have to do. It's not just gonna be just your courses. So it's important to have those extracurriculars and that work balance life, because I think every healthcare profession, nursing, physiotherapy, doctor, researcher, et cetera, they're all going to want to see that you have a life, not just you're just focused on just your academics, and then that you're just some person who's a blank slate and you can't talk to. You want to see someone who has personality and someone who's outgoing and has these different experiences. So I think ensuring that you are, playing your sports, doing your hobbies, whether that be music, artwork, sports, anything, making sure that you do devote time and commit to those things in addition to your academics. And as long as you do all that, as long as you are involved and you are doing those extracurriculars and you're doing well in your academics, just being a holistic person, just that's all you really got to do. And then everything else is kind of we'll just go forwards after that.
Awesome, that was a great answer. So the next question is towards Sydney, and it's asked from a grade 11 student at FRC, and they asked, it is no surprise that COVID-19 has had a negative effect on many people and their mental health. We usually tend to focus on that. Have there been any positive effects given these uncertain times?
That's a really great question, and I think that it's something that would have to be answered at an individual level. I think everyone's experience with this is so different, and I mean, especially when we look at disparities in health outcomes by ethnic minority groups, like Indigenous communities and non-white families are really struggling in this time, just because we've been targeted economically and have been placed at a disadvantage by the majority population since, pretty much since colonization. And so I think that there's a lot of people who are struggling, as we know, in terms of benefits. I think it's really showing us that there are ways to stay in touch that don't involve meeting in person. We're really seeing things like in the workplace that have been effective in terms of Zoom meetings. So, maybe from the perspective of somebody who is more socially anxious, but wants to have a position in a certain career and would feel more comfortable staying home doing that, I think this is proving that there are ways to support those preferences. I think also for people who are more introverted, I spoke of that before, this could be like a really nice restorative period just to kind of get a break from some busyness that exists in our normal day-to-day lives. I think that's kind of how I felt in the beginning, but now it's sort of feeling like a bit more of a drag, and I'm definitely feeling the isolation and the loneliness sort of starting to weigh as we get into this second wave, if you will. But I think just making sure that, you connect with the ones that you love from a distance, if that's feasible. And then also just connecting with nature. That's been super important to me. And I think I've really learned the value in that through all of this. Like just getting out for a walk every day has been invaluable to my mental wellness, I know for sure. But like I said, I think it's just so dependent on the person. And yeah, I hope that people just continue to explore what works for them and stick to that as much as possible.
That was great. Thank you so much. So the next question is asked by a grade 11 student who goes to Gordon Bell. Is studying the sciences at a university level way harder than high school? If so, how much harder? Do you think that most people are able to handle it?
I might take a stab at that one. Since I also went to Gordon Bell High School, and I think it was great. So you probably had some of the same science teachers. I think studying science in university is definitely harder because, of course, the difficulty goes up the more classes you take in year by year. But I also think that if you are well prepared in high school, and if you did well in your science courses, you should really have no trouble getting into those initial courses. And obviously it's different for everybody, right? Like different people have different skills in different courses and that kind of thing. But if you I think you'll find that the first year courses in university, at least the ones that I took, were really designed to bring everybody up to the same level of like mathematical skills and science knowledge. So yeah, I think is if you put in the work for those classes, you'll find that at least in the first year courses, it'll really get you all up to the same kind of level as everybody else. And then from then on, you might find more courses easier than others, but you'll have the basis for all those courses. And the one, if there's one skill that I would emphasize the most, it would probably be math, because all of your science courses are going to involve math in some way. So even if you don't know like subject matter, you can get by if you have like the math skills to that the course involves.
Thank you. So the next question is from an SJR student in grade 12, and they asked, what do you think are some key differences in health science at the University of Manitoba in comparison to other universities?
Let me wrote the question in the panel there. Let me just read it again. What do you think are some key differences in health science? So obviously, yeah, you'd have your undergraduate level, and then you'd have your graduate level. At the undergraduate level, in terms of the Manitoba landscape. So again, we're looking at U of M, U of W, CMU, Red River Collegiate, Providence, which is a very small university near Steinbach. I went to Vincent Massey, and actually my high school, it was bigger than both CMU and Providence in terms of population size anyways. So yeah, those are two smaller schools, but those ones, and then I guess there's Brandon, and then there are some other Brand University, and then there are some like other colleges, I think, around the city and the province too. But those are kind of your main institutions. In terms of health sciences, all U of M, CMU, U of W all have a science degree program. And CMU's labs are beautiful, actually. Those are still relatively new in the last 5-6 years, I think. So those are really nice there. And again, that smaller environment too at CMU. I didn't have to take biology or chemistry at U of M because I did take them at CMU. If you're someone who likes smaller classes and not as frantic, crazy environments, then CMU, you're going to have your anywhere in a class from, yeah, Malcolm said 6. I think I had, yeah, like 15 in mine. The biggest class I ever took at CMU was 60, which was like psychology, which is like the course that I think almost everybody ends up taking eventually, introduction to psychology. So smaller class sizes at U of M or CMU, or U of M especially. Some of the labs, like, first of all, you got about 250 to 300 people in a class, and then they will break up those labs in about 30 to 40 people, but even then it's still very fast paced, and it can be a little intimidating in there sometimes. So that's just kind of my experience in terms of labs anyways. And then in terms of the degree I'm in, which is also health sciences kinesiology, there is a kinesiology degree at U of M and U of W. You could go to CMU and you could take some first year courses and then go into that degree after. Red River does not have kinesiology or science, as far as I know. Definitely not kinesiology. Science, I could be wrong. I don't think so, though. They're more of a trades school. You can do lots of things. And Red River is really big now. I think it's even bigger than U of W in terms of population. There probably is over 10,000 people there now. But again, that's more of a trades type of institution. So yeah, in terms of health sciences differences there, I think that kind of touches on some of them, but definitely, yeah, class sizes, U of M really big, CMU pretty small, and then yeah, I think that if there's any other follow-up questions you have to that, or if I got all the points you were looking there for, you can let me know or give me a thumbs up or
No, yeah, I think that was really good. You gave a good comparison to the 2 different schools you attended. Thank you. So the next question is from an SGR student in grade 11, and they asked, how has university changed for you as a result of COVID-19? Are you finding it more difficult to maintain your school marks?
I think that's a really great question. I know for me, I started work online before I got back into school online. So I've been doing my research remotely since May. And that was definitely an adjustment at first, but in the lab that I'm working in, we had regular Zoom meetings. So we were always in contact, and we have a group chat in Slack that we would always communicate through. And I found a lot of similarity there in school. Like most of my classes have a group chat on some platform, just to communicate with your fellow classmates and check in about things that are unclear. I think my grades have dropped a little bit, but I think that's just because I'm now juggling a pretty heavy workload on top of a full course load. And that was something that would have really terrified me a few years ago, but I think I've become a lot more comfortable with not doing 100% in everything. I'm finding the courses that don't have a Zoom component a lot more difficult because it's harder to stay engaged when you're just reading pages and pages of notes as opposed to hearing a prof lecture. So those are definitely some challenges that I've had to adapt to. But yeah, overall, I think it's nice to not have to commute into school every day, especially for the winter that we have coming. That's something that I'm just staying grateful for, to look on the bright side. So yeah, that's been my experience.
Thank you for that. The next question, I believe, is still more targeted at you, Sydney. So it's from a UBC student, and they asked, what courses did you take to major in psychology?
That's a great question. So I highly recommend meeting with a student advisor when you are looking to get into your or starting your psych program. There's information available online, but sometimes it's just nicer to have it sort of personalized to you, and just get a big picture sense of what's to be expected. So you'll have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000 level courses in first year, second year, third year, fourth year, respectively. And so for the psych courses, you'll have to take behavioral psych courses, developmental psych courses, abnormal psych, social and personality psych, and research methods. As you go along your degree program, you can do those in whichever your research methods actually starts in third year. And yeah, you'll have to do stats as well for most psych programs. At least that's what it's like at the U of M. It's like a stats research methods blend kind of course that you'll experience throughout. And then you get, yeah, electives. And I think that's pretty much it for the required courses. There's some room for tailoring it to your interests. Like you can do personality psych or social psych. And then some you just have to get over with, like the research methods one, which is often not super fun for a lot of students, especially if you're more like qualitative methods oriented, whereas stats is all quantitative. So those are some of the basics of what that degree would involve. And then I also recommend finding a prof you really like and see, because most profs are involved in research. So get in touch with a prof that you like in a class that you really like and say, are you hiring like even voluntary students for your research? Is there any way I could help? And then it just really gets your foot in the door, especially if you're looking to pursue grad school in psych. So definitely recommend connecting with your profs in that way.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question is from a grade 12 student at St. Norbert Collegiate, and they asked, I think this is something more targeted towards Bryden. They asked, what first year courses do you recommend U1 students to take? What are you doing to prep for the MCAT? And do you have any study hacks for better retention of information?
Some really good questions there. Okay, first of all, I just want to backtrack just a bit because an idea came up, and it was related to that first question, just that work and balance life concept. I think a big problem I had the first couple years was, sounds kind of weird, but not having enough to do. And I think that really elicits procrastination to an extreme, and not procrastination to the point where, okay, I'm getting bad grades. I would be getting, yeah, you know, your A's and A pluses, but it was taking like so much amount of my time because I didn't have like, you know, a volunteering gig, or I didn't have like, you know, maybe I had like a intramural basketball game once a week or something, or I'd go work out, but I didn't have like any other things I was really doing like in my, I'd say, second year and third year. And I think sometimes when you don't have those extra commitments, then it just gives you all this extra time now to study, and then I find myself spending too much time then on my work, and then if yeah, get good grades, but I'm not doing anything else, is that really productive? I don't think so. So it's good to have those extracurriculars, good to have some things in your schedule, and then it doesn't give you not enough time. It just limits your window of time to procrastinate. So then it's like, I have to study during this time. I have to get it done. I have these 3 hours and I can't be on my phone. And because, yeah, like you'll be amazed how much you end up going on your phone or searching up nonsense on YouTube or just stuff like that. Like we've all done it, I think, at some point. But if you do have those extracurriculars, you do have that extra life, you go make times to see friends and stuff and participate in student groups or teams or whatever, then yeah, just close your window a little bit, just to the point where it's good enough where you have enough time, but you're not too much time. And then, so some of these questions here, what first year courses do you recommend U1 students to take? Again, I think it does depend on like what degree program you're going to be in exactly, but I think, you know, some of those common first year courses like psychology always are like, you know, prereqs for lots of degrees and majors. I think it's the most commonly taken course in all of university. They'll have like 4 or 5 sections at U of M, and they all have 300 students in them. I think statistics is usually pretty important to take first year. Ends up being a course that you'll need to complete lots of degrees, whether it be kinesiology or biology or chemistry. Again, considering that most of you guys are in health sciences or wanting to go into health sciences, yeah, first year biology is going to be important. First year chemistry is important. And you know, once you got those 4, like that's a lot on your plate already, and 2 of those courses have labs in them, so it's almost like adding an extra course sometimes when you think about it. So there's a lot of time you got to devote there already. Everyone's different. Some can take 5, some might need 3, which also goes to another point where don't be mad or don't be afraid or don't get bothered by maybe your friends or something. If it takes you maybe 5 years to complete a 4-year or 3-year degree, you know, some degrees are 3 or 4 years. It's okay if you take a 5th year. I took a 5th year. I'm so happy I took a 5th year, because if I didn't, then I'd probably be maybe still thinking the physiotherapy route. And I took that extra year, and now I've kind of focused my goals and thought a little differently. So, you know, don't be worried about what your friends are doing, that they're getting their 4-year degree done in 4 years, or they got it done in 3 years or something crazy. Don't worry, or the fact that, oh, I'm gonna apply to med when I'm 24, and then when I'm done I'll be 33, and it just seems like it's too late or something. No, it's not. It's not too late. It's never too late. There's doctors who apply when they're 35 and maybe had another job or did research or a master's beforehand. So don't worry about that whole you got to get it done right away thing. Take your education, because you're going to take that with you for the rest of your life, and the knowledge you gain from there. So like I said, taking time to make those connections, not just going through the motions and trying to think creatively. So yeah, so I think those 4 courses I mentioned there, you know, maybe in English too. I don't need, I guess, ENGL they call it. So an English course. It's not mandatory for what I'm doing, but again, for physiotherapy it is. So that's one option there, where English is mandatory. So it's good to also look at, and again, you guys might and most likely will probably change your career goals maybe multiple times as well. But looking at online, or talking to an advisor, what are some of the courses you got to take, and that will just make it useful so you're using your electives and using your courses effectively. But yeah, in terms of a health science, usually those are 4 pretty common courses: science or biology, chemistry, statistics, psychology, and then but yeah, look at what your degree program is and what the requirements are. To prep for your MCAT, I got a giant $350 book or book package that has first year chemistry, first year biology, organic chemistry, biochemistry, psychology, a critical reasoning section, which is on our exam, which is on the exam too. So I will start opening that in January. And then just finishing the rest of my degree requirements and the courses there. So you have your degree, because you need to have a minimum of at least 1 degree when you apply for medicine. And then, yeah, just also in terms of medicine, yeah, doing some extracurriculars, being involved, volunteering, it's good. Hacks for better retention. One thing I like to do is when I get notes or lecture material, write out my notes into question formats. So again, all courses are different, but if one's like very like multiple choice based, it's like this wouldn't work for chemistry. You need to do lots of practice and stuff. But if it's a class like, you know, biology, or if it's anatomy even too, lots of multiple choice type exams sometimes. I like to write my notes into questions that I think the profs are going to ask. So looking at what are the key concepts, learning objectives that the professors mention in their lectures or that they hint at, write them into questions, write an answer to those questions based off the notes I have, cover the answers up, and then talk them out. I think a big thing is talking for me, and talking them out loud or trying to rewrite the answer, not just simply just reading it. Some people can read and retain stuff really well, and I find that really crazy that people can do that, but everyone's different. But I need to do that writing and then talking out type of stuff. So that'd be my answer there.
If I could maybe, thanks for all of that, Bryden. That's very good answers. I'm not studying for the MCAT myself, but one of my favorite study hacks, just to like echo what you said, if you can explain what you like a concept that you're learning in a class to somebody else, and if they don't have any knowledge of it, that's a great way to like solidify it in your memory. Often I'm the first person in my family to study science in college, at university, whatever. So just like kind of explaining a concept that I learned in class to like my parents, or they ask me, you know, how our class is going, that kind of thing. I find that actually really helps me like retain what I'm learning.
Awesome. Thanks to the both of you for answering that question. We have 2 questions that were submitted just privately in the chat here. So the first one is from a grade 12 student at Balmoral Hall, and they ask, Sydney, do you ever combine chemistry or biology with psychology in your courses? Are there any neuroscience-based courses at the U of M in psychology that you know of?
So there are 2 streams that you can do a psych degree through, and that's either arts or science. So if you're more science oriented, but you're looking to get into psych, you can do a Bachelor of Science majoring in psychology or honors in psych. I went the arts route, but definitely with respect to neuroscience, a lot of the mandatory classes will touch on those biological processes anyways, not to the extent that you'll need a really significant bio background to understand, but things like cognitive processes and brain and behavior are the 2 that come to mind. Those are 2000 level courses, I think, and I mean, you can do them at whichever point in your undergrad that you want, but they're definitely more focused on sort of the neurological processes involved in cognition and behavior. So if that's up your alley, that's plenty of that you'll be able to get into when you do your undergrad degree.
Okay, great. Thank you. Before I do the last question here, does anyone in the audience right now have any questions? Like, I'm just going to open it up to the floor, so you can feel free to turn on your mic or text something in the chat.
I have a question.
For sure.
So this question's just in general. I heard you were talking about doing research projects. And when it comes to research projects, what do you exactly, or in what way, or how do I word this? How do you exactly decide what you want to research?
I'll give some examples of the things that I've been doing. Um, so not all the research projects that I'm doing in class uh, and at university are things that I've chosen. The one that I mentioned that I'm doing in my developmental biology class, that's something that we've broken up into groups in the class, and we're all doing sort of variations on. But it's as part of the class work. So that was based on a ton of research that my professor has done, and we're just kind of like continuing that. So it wasn't something that we really chose exactly, but we get to choose what little like area within that research we're going to do. I also am taking a class called Quantitative Research Methods in Ecology. And so it's a continuation of a previous ecology class where the class project was to create a research proposal for an experiment we could do like here in the Assiniboine Forest. So we all wrote one with different methods, and the prof chose one of those research projects to base this next class around. So that's an example of like a way that one of your research projects might end up being put into place at university. You can also take classes, things like independent study classes, where like your whole class is just a research project of your own making, or like writing a thesis of some kind, usually under the direction of like a prof. So that would be another way that you could really get to choose what exactly you're going to do for a research project.
I think I could add on to that a bit too. Obviously, Sydney being in grad school, she would know a lot about research and how research as a main thing you're doing in terms of your work, how that works, because I'm still an undergrad student. But as an undergrad student, you know, looking at some of my courses I've taken, and then again, that whole thing of trying to make connections and seeing what your interests are. Yeah, my faculty has a thing where you can do for 12 credit hours, so the equivalent of 4 courses, you can do a thing called fieldwork. And there's about, I don't know, 70 kids in my graduating class right now, and I think only 3 of us chose research, so it's not something that's often thought about. But I did, and I mean, there's what, 30 or 40 faculty members, and all of them do research of some kind. It's good maybe to connect with them maybe beforehand, and you've probably taken classes with them, so you can kind of learn what course they've taught, and then they'll talk about their research in their classes too, so you can kind of get an idea about it. And then you just kind of have to contact these people, and you have to take the initiative yourself. They're not going to come to you. You got to go to them, and you got to say, you know, I'm interested in research, and you got to send emails, and you can't be afraid to do that type of stuff. So that's a big thing in terms of that networking part I was talking about. And then just the fact that, you know, going to medicine, that's again, some institutions such as like in Ontario or University of British Columbia, which I've been looking at, you know, research and stuff they'd like to see. So looking at some of those end things, as these are some of the requirements. And then, you know, I was thinking of the profession of physiatry, which is like a neuromusculoskeletal physician. And that one, so obviously one of our professors does neuromusculoskeletal research. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll do a placement with her. And then I like the idea of Indigenous health research and promoting health within Indigenous communities and looking at the history and sociology of it. So one of our professors does that research. So I contacted him and made that my placement. So sometimes you gotta just kind of put your foot in the door, not be afraid to speak, and kind of sometimes make your own initiatives and make your own plans and focus on your own career goals.
Thank you again for those answers from the two of you. I will move into another question from the chat. If you go into interdisciplinary sciences, would you also be able to study microbiology immunology, or anything else?
I guess interdisciplinary, I guess that would be kind of like kinesiology, I guess, and you can absolutely take electives such as immunology. Again, you're going to have your course first to fourth year schedule. There'll be about I don't know, 60 to 90 credits that are like mandatory that you have to take to graduate, but then the rest are kind of your own choice. I think that's pretty common amongst most degrees. You get most mandatory courses, and then there's lots of options, at least 30 credit hours for electives, I would think, for most degrees. As long as you have some of the prereqs. So again, if you say microbiology, immunology, then definitely you need to have then chemistries, biologies, psychologies in your first year. And then if you want to take electives like that, microbiology, immunology, absolutely you can. And there's also things called minor degrees too at the university. And I think those are usually around that 18 credit hour range, and they have specific courses to fulfill a minor. So you can, if a minor degree also interests somebody in addition to their major that they're already taking, then by all means, you can take courses like that.
Awesome, thank you for that. There are a couple questions that were asked from the chat, all regarding med school. So I'm gonna try to get these done here. So one of them is, what do you prioritize more as an applicant to med school, your CV or your GPA? And is there a trend among med schools for deciding which type of student they want between those things?
Good question. Wow, that's really thinking ahead there. If you're still in high school and you're thinking about that type of stuff, wow, that's very impressive. Because only I've been finding this information in the last year or so. So at the U of M, for example, and that would obviously be a good starting point for most people to apply if they're in this chat here. They base their criteria off of your interview, your GPA, and your it's a Casper test, they call it. So a situational reasoning test where you got to go through a bunch of different stations and then write out answers related to some very interesting situation that can be totally irrelevant to medicine. They just want to see how you problem solve and think on the spot, because that's a good telling point of a doctor, I guess, is being able to problem solve on the fly. GPA, I think, is worth 25 to 30% of your application, and then your interviews, I think, is worth the most. Your resume, I don't think it comes into effect per se, but you should have a good resume, because I think you still have to submit it, and then the experiences that you gain from that will help you on your interview, because they'll just ask you, again, very random questions sometimes that might not be related to anything about being a doctor, but you still got to have those experiences and then those volunteering and those extracurriculars, and it just helps you be able to apply to any situation possible. Other schools, some are more non-academic based and want to see more of how you are as a person, and some of them will be like 70% of the application. At Master University, for example, in Ontario, 70% of your application is your interview, and then maybe like 10% of it's your GPA, and then 20% your Casper, and then some don't care about GPA at all. Some want you to write an essay about how to get into med school, and write an essay about all your resume-based stuff. So it's all different, but in terms of U of M, GPA, and then GPA, interview, your Casper are your three main ones there.
Okay, great, thank you. So I think we're just gonna do one more question from the chat, and then we're gonna sort of wrap things up here, unfortunately. We would love to have time for more questions, but I think some really good ones have been asked so far throughout this period. So the last question, once again, towards, I think it can be answered towards you. Do you know of a preference by med schools for 3-year versus 4-year degrees? Is there any value in adding a year if your end goal is medicine and they are a 12th grader from Calvin High?
The general science degree at the U of M is 90 credit hours, and that is allowed for applying to medical school, or you can do one that's 4 years, 120 credit hours. As long as you have an undergraduate degree, does not matter what it is, you can apply to medical school with it. Some students might apply after their second year, and then by the time then they're done their third year, because it's a year you got to wait, then you can get in then right after you finish your third year. Or you can take a 4-year degree, you can take any undergraduate degree you want.
Okay, great. So I think we're gonna start to wrap things up now. I just want to thank all 3 of the panelists who came here today and spoke about their individual discussions. I think you guys each brought up really interesting points about your own education, your own journey throughout university. I know I and the team, I'm sure, really love to hear everything you had to say, and all the participants today, I'm sure, really gained some wonderful insight into more about what university is like. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Katrina to wrap up for the rest.
Thank you, Isha. Once again, thank you so much to 3 of our lovely panelists here. And thank you so much to Isha for organizing this panel and for being our moderator here. All of the executive team members contribute in unique ways. And this is one of the ways that, for example, a role would fulfill their responsibilities. So thank you so much to all of you. If you aren't already following us on social media, I highly recommend you follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on any upcoming events that Project Pulse has to offer. So we have a variety of asynchronous and synchronous resources coming up very soon. So if you are following us on social media, you'll receive updates on when those things will be released. Again, thank you so much to everyone for tuning in today. I feel like getting to hear all these unique stories was very inspirational and really brought the community together in a way. I'm glad that we were able to have some back and forth and some like discussions here. So that was very nice. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening, and we'll see you around next time.
Oh, can I answer a question that Emilio had here? He sent it to me privately. So for applying to medical school, yeah, I didn't articulate this as well as I would have liked to. I said the requirements, but again, there's more of a step-by-step process. So yes, your degree, and then your MCAT that you do are going to be your 2 first things that you tackle. And then at U of M as well, you're required to do a Casper test. Those 3 components will then be what the university rates you on, and then determines based off your scores on all 3 of those things and the rest of the applicants if you'll get an interview. So if you'll be offered an interview. And then when you do that interview, it's called a multiple mini interview. So it's like 12 different stations, and they're each 10 minutes long, and you get asked a question. So it could be like, oh, why are you interested in going to medical school? Or they could ask you some crazy question like, do you think it's fair that healthcare workers would go on strike? Just like stuff like that. So it could be related or it could be totally kind of unrelated. It has to see how you kind of think and stuff like that. So again, that's the U of M requirements, and I'm still in that process too. And I'm still learning it on the spot, on the fly right now. So, but that's what I know for U of M. Again, for other universities, all have different paths, but definitely, yeah, degree, GPA, and then write your MCAT, and then there'll be more steps involved elsewhere. But that's the U of M process.
Okay, I think that finally wraps up the whole panel today.
Yeah, thank you so much to everyone again for tuning in. We're just going to have the executive team meet with our panelists now. So I hope you guys tune in for our future events. We're just going to give people a minute to sign off and then. Hi, Karen, are you there? All right, there we go. So Malcolm, Sydney, and Bryden, thank you so much for all of your lovely presentations. It was so great to hear all of your stories. The people you see here are most of the executive team, and they were eager to meet you and to say hi. So I'll leave the floor open to them just to interact, and yeah.
You guys did an amazing job. I could listen to you three all day. But yeah, I'm also part of the executive team, and I am in my first year of University of Manitoba in U1. So a lot of the stuff that you guys were just saying were really relatable. So I appreciate that.
What were you thinking of doing after University 1 there, Sean?
I was thinking of going into Bachelor of Health Sciences for my undergraduate and then going to med school after. So kind of the same path, yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks for having us all here. It was great to be able to talk to everybody. So I'm just like curious about all of you're all like high school students and university students. Is that right? Cool. And like, is everybody sort of going like the medical like physician path, or I'm just curious. It seemed like when Bryden, when you asked that, like most people gave the thumbs up. So seems like that's the truth. Okay, cool.
And again, it might totally change. You guys might want to end up being a veterinarian or an astronaut. So, but as you can see, as you can see from our experiences, but again, I thought health sciences, and each time it stayed within that realm, that umbrella of health sciences, it just kind of changed paths. But yeah, don't be alarmed or don't be worried if you foresee or believe that you're a year behind now all of a sudden because you changed your degree program. I don't like when people say, oh, I'm so behind now. I really hate that. I'm taking 6 years to do what will be a 4-year degree. Like, no, and then you start trying to hit yourself in the head and be like, oh, I made all these mistakes first year. I should have had myself plan better out. Yeah, don't dwell on that type of stuff. It's all going to work out in the end. And you guys everyone's still really young. And yeah, I'm applying to med, 20, 22, 23 years old. Hopefully I get in first try, definitely not a given. So I could be much older than the average applicant who's around that 21 to 22 range, but it's not going to bother me. So it's all good.
Yeah, I think we make up this timeline for ourselves, and I think that that's imposed by the universities and just in our society. It's a very kind of go, fast-paced value type of system, but that timeline doesn't actually exist outside of our minds. There's no harm, like Bryden said, in taking a little bit more time to finish something outside of the prescribed schedule that universities might set. And I think it's just so important to not wait to live your life until after your degree. Like travel if you want to travel, take a gap year if you want to take one. Really lighten your course load and stretch it out if that's easier on you. I think there's no one way to do any of this. So just find what feels good for you and stick with that as much as possible.
I realize we're keeping you quite over time here, and again, thank you so much for sticking around and for being here and for contributing to Project Pulse. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that it must have taken to put something like this on. I'm so impressed with your abilities at such a young age, not to sound like, oh, you guys are so young, because I hate when people do that to me, but it's really truly something worth recognition. So thank you all for taking the time out of your day to set this up. I think it's a really meaningful initiative that you have going.
Yeah, I just want to say also, like, thank you to the three of you once again. Like, this really cool happened. So I really appreciate it, and this was really great.
Thank you so much.
Well, we hope you have a lovely evening, and take care.
Thanks. Take care.
Best of luck, everyone, your guys' studies.
Yeah, nice to meet you all.
All right, floating head.
We did it, y'all. Hold up.
Oh wait, my mic was off the whole time.
There you go, Katrina. You figured it out. He was still inside.
Yeah, it's okay. Good job, guys. That was
Isha.
yeah,
Amazing
good job, Isha. Congrats.
Yay.
Oh, I was trying not to die over here. Not gonna lie. And yeah, but
Yeah, I was just sweating the whole time.
It was so hard to keep a straight face when his audio kept going like up and down at the beginning. I had to stop myself from laughing so many times.
I think I turned my camera off a bunch of times. I can't do this.
Yeah, Sasha, I had to like open a different tab to cover your face because you kept laughing, and I didn't want to keep seeing you.
Oh my god, because I had friends like in the call and they were like, what's going on all at once?
When the eagle thing on the group chat.
I'm sorry. I just had to say something.
I texted Eagle too. I was like, why are you just sitting in the dark? You're in like the middle of the screen and it's just like pitch black.
All planned out to provide the entertainment.
All right, so it's been a long day, guys. We've been here since 2 p.m. Again, thank you to all of you for sticking around, and for the people who might not be able to turn on their cameras and use their mic. I see you as well, and we appreciate you. All right, so if anything comes up this weekend in terms of things we need to do or stuff like that, just be sure to send a text to the group chat. You guys know the drill. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take some time to debrief and take care of yourselves.
Just sucks that we didn't get through every question that the people submitted. But then that's kind of part of, like, yeah, they talked about most of it in their speeches.
Yeah. Some of them, a lot of them were just like pretty simple questions that the panelists did like pretty much fully answer, I think. Like almost all of them touched on those questions, so I skipped them. There was like maybe 2-3 questions from the chat that couldn't get answered just because we were already like over time.
There were a lot submitted through the Google form too that we didn't get to. Like at one point I messaged Isha through Zoom. I was like, just pick and choose, and then yeah. But it's nice to see that so many people were engaged and that they, were really curious. So we put together a pretty good panel, y'all. Like that was a good trio. So oh, Christine. Okay, well, you guys are free to go if you'd like, but Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I was trying so hard not to die, Bavia. Oh my god.
See your text after 5 minutes. I was like, wait, she can text me on here because I'm looking at my phone.
Because like, I think
Are you okay?
I think it was good.
I was like, oh my god.
It's just a lot of sitting because then like just the panel and then this. And
Yeah.
then, yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you for all of your support and all of your help.
Yeah. You guys did great.
Thank
It's
you.
pretty good.
I guess we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.